Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful. Excuse me. Auzubillah shaitan rajim. May God protect us from the cursed one and unnecessary ignorance. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. All praise due to the Lord of the worlds. Rabbit, fear thee, my Lord, forgive me for all the sins that I have been conscious and unconscious of. Ihdina sirata mustaqim. May God guide us to the direct path. So, I'll begin this lecture by saying that it all started, the topic, like the title of this lecture was, I was responding to this comment on YouTube as my YouTube channel, and I said this sentence at some point. And so I thought this sentence was glowing for me. It was like it had such an allure for me that I thought, like, okay, let me share it. Just this sentence, to be honest, it's an endless viewpoint. Now, I thought, like, how cool of an idea, because, like, who was it? I think it might have been Andy Warhol, where he had this quote that when you go to the edge, you see things that you couldn't have seen before. An endless viewpoint means a viewpoint that the further you go through it, you cannot see an end. So it's like an infinite viewpoint. An endless viewpoint, a viewpoint that has no end. For example, as a Muslim, when I consider God, God is all merciful, God is all knowing, God is all great. Do you understand what I'm saying? That means it's like it's an endless viewpoint. That attribute, in some sense, in its ultimate form, is possible. So I guess in this lecture, like a hunter, not like a hunter, but I would say like someone, it's as if like an advanced research, if I had an advanced research team, we'd be like, okay, let's look at this concept of an endless viewpoint. Now, if we consider what's the point of perception opening up to a degree that we can't see its end, for me, what has fascinated me personally is like I've had some unanswered questions to reality. Some of these questions was like, wait a minute, the world is so much bigger than human beings. So like the first clue was the world is too big for human beings. Second clue was the human beings are too temporary to see that whatever they do in the world. You understand? These are clues. The third clue is they have a specific design. They have ears and a mouth. They have hands that can build. They have an awareness to awareness that other creatures on the planet don't. Where am I going with this? The clues to human life kind of suggest what it's about. And the whole point of the idea of truth is that there's something there before you were and you're noticing it. For me, it's like it for me, for some reason the narrative that it's a simulated testing zone within a divine surveillance state makes so much more sense than it's just like human beings acting like they're the higher power. Do you know what I mean? An endless viewpoint is a very powerful idea because it can be applied to anything. You can say that a person in any attribute can be given a sort of endless context to. Do you know, like endless compassion, endless hate, endless love, endless advancement, endless greatness, endless victory, endless suffering. Do you see? It's something that can be given. It's like an attribute that can be given to any attribute because it's a suggestion on its limitations of time. So, to be honest, it's an endless viewpoint is the suggestion that the viewpoint is existing simply because there's a concept and context. So one of those two is either infinite or they both are. Do you know what that means? So I'll give you an example. So this is us fathoming the possibility of reality not through physical limitation, but through abstract limitation. And so what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to just fathom for a moment, what would an endless context look like? And what would an endless concept look like or be like? So an endless context we have, it's the world, the giant world we can't see its edge end of. Do you know? So we can't see the edge of the cosmos, the end of the cosmos. So do you know, we kind of are already experiencing a sort of endless context, but we don't know what it's like to experience an endless concept, which is the self. So if the world is the context for the concept of self, if we can fathom an endless world, can we fathom an endless self? Pretty much. So we have come to the notion of an endless self, and technically we can fathom an endless self, but it requires you just multiplying your past. What I mean is that, like, I could imagine like 30 years of life on Earth, and then I could imagine like 30 times like infinity. What I'm saying is that the reality can be multiplied by itself, just like it's being divided by itself for us to comprehend it, right? Anyways, I'm gonna keep going. In front of my eyes, yes, the world has an endless context, you know, but at the same time, the human being, biological being, has a finite context, not an infinite context. Okay? So we are like this finite meaning generator in the middle of this unknown event. And every person, just like how like the mind is acting like a transformer. Do you know what that means? That means in the Transformer movie, the kid was like, yo, this car looks like junk. And then the sponsors of the show were like, yo, man, the car became that car, became a better car. Do you understand? So, in the same way, what knowledge is human beings updating themselves with current conditions and then ultimately realizing that their life force and the meaning of their life is pretty much how they direct their energy into the future, towards the future. Something that current culture has been hiding from itself, and all egos have as well, is the ultimate consideration that the ego knows that if the body dies, it dies. It's kind of strange, but it's like the ego's control over the soul is through the body, but the soul is the awareness where the body and mind are happening. And if you realize that, you find yourself not no longer an idea, but as that awareness to change that technically doesn't change. Ultimately, you will realize the human being has limitations and it needs a higher ideal. That higher ideal, right now in modern culture, is being made through Maslow's hierarchy, the self. So we're living in an era where human beings are worshiping themselves and they're trying to self actualize. They're technically worshiping the potential of their current selves, their future self. It's very fascinating to me. Everybody seems to be hired and employed by their future self. They're all living for something. You know, when you see a human being be active, just a human being even walking to a store, they might not have complex like philosophy or sociology theories on like why they're behaving that way. They might just be going to the store to get like water or something, you know. But it's kind of like the motivation to move it all requires that a character in a story has decided to do something about their story, right? So ultimately what I'm saying is when you look at the human being, what you're seeing is you're seeing the expression of this intelligence. But then the next question is how much of this expression is motivated by abstraction, how much of it is motivated by reality. And where human beings have tapped into an endless viewpoint seems to be in how the mind can in some sense see a shape and wonder about it from as many contexts as it can bring forth. We're living in an interesting time. For me, human consciousness cannot ignore the fact that it is in a simulated state. Your body is simulated, it has a life cycle. Do you know the thoughts that come and go throughout the day within your attention have a life cycle? Pretty much life is really about things just going forth and changing, but something seems to be constantly restabilizing itself as it changes. Okay, so to me, at some point I began to realize that if something in the domains of my conscious free will doesn't make sense, it's another way of saying like it's not just my conscious free will in the moment moving the moment. You see, folks, we're tackling the issue of how should the human organism process the notion of infinity. And for me, as someone who has confronted this idea, I have recognized that the under all what is underpinning all ideology what is keeping all ideology afloat is simply an awareness to being. It's like if you were to kind of like explain what's happening to this organism, it's an awareness to how it's being here, but based on how it notices it's being here, it in some sense opts into a dualistic framework. That means any person who can say, yo, that's good, that's bad, any person that has morality, morality is proof that you're in a dualistic reality. Okay? So the nature of it is all about how you choose to acknowledge yourself as a human being. You can ask someone, yo, man, what does it mean to be a human being? The person's like, bro, it's like you're in an empty room, be as hedonistic as possible. You're like, okay, some person has that strategy. Then you, in some sense, ask someone, the other person's like, no, man, you have a mind, you have conscience, you have, in some sense, a moral or a responsibility. You need to care for reality. And eventually you realize it seems like in modern times, the mind's greatest act is love. Okay, so they're like, okay, and you're like, okay, I'm loving everybody, you know. And then you ask someone else, hey man, what's the point of, like, let's say the same question, and they say it's all about the nature of what your how you, I guess it's all about, I guess a term not maybe often used, the soul's alignment. It's all about, like, what is at your core of being animating you, and how you realize that your whole life has been just your definitions upon reality. When a human being realizes that their eyes don't just belong to them, the world you see changes. In other words, what I mean by that sentence is that you have an opinion on yourself, but you are just one conscious agent in a system that has an opinion on yourself. In regards to what your true value is as an existential design may be way deeper than our conceptual grasps as in some sense these human beings. So, ladies and gentlemen, you are actually in a very complicated, not very complicated, you're in a very interesting place. And my findings have simply been this, that yes, it is a simulation. Yes, everything seems, yes, the body is the life form. Yes, the mind is a life force. Yes, there's an awareness that is aware of how the life force is moving the life form. Yes, there are these, all of these can be considered as one moment of being. And then, yes, there's a unique purpose to the design of each aspect of man. In other words, you're like, what is the purpose of my body? One night you just, or one day you just shout at the sky, what is the purpose of my body? And you realize your body is a tool based on what you can, in some sense, do. Well, it's pretty much you've entered a system and you're going to leave this system. What are you going to do while you're here? Right? And that depends on your search for what you consider to be deep down within yourself the most important. That means they're like, yo, man, do I need a motivational coach? No. You just need to look at life and ask yourself what is important. And that requires an honesty that may frighten you at first, but the clarity it brings is light years ahead of how you feel now. So, where I'm going with all of this is trying to suggest that human consciousness can be treated as a noun, it can be treated as a verb, right? People get offended if you don't treat them like a certain noun, right? I could even be like a bit like a transcendentalist can get offended if people don't treat them like a verb. You know what I mean? But in reality, what it's going on is pretty much like, you know how there's like an Iron Man suit? Imagine like the human body is a carbon, it's like we're all dressed in carbon man suits, okay? So this biological existence is how an unknown intelligent force, an unknown intelligent life force, is animating a life form. So it's kind of like like to move your body is not just you being a physical entity, is you considering a scenario where it's your physical existence alongside all the abstract probabilities to it and the subjective models that the mind generates. What the brain is doing is like, yo, I see reality, copy paste, and behind your eyes is in some sense generating modifications of it. We're actually such an advanced technology as a human being that we don't I am truly confident when I say this, but we haven't understood even how to activate as a proper human being. There's like something missing from the context of the human species in 2025 that you, as much as I could be a lion from the future roaring, it doesn't matter, you know. Because on some level it's all about how 8 billion human organisms are aware of their reality, and they say in order for any relationship to work the values must be the same. So similarly it's like asking what are the chances of 8 billion human beings on earth suddenly shifting their value system from thinking that they're just a nationalistic entity and the subjective story they're telling themselves, and truly look in the mirror and realize that they're a member of the human species and we're all in the game of advancing the human species. Something that must not just be taught by every parent, but must it will become the central core of the honest marketing era. You don't understand. Marketing industry is going to shift to truth, so it has no choice if it wants to remain. That means, and it's like an honest marketing era will appear, you know, and it's going to be incredible. People, companies are going to make so much more money by being honest about their products. You don't understand. Because that what makes the customer select is trust. Trust is an emotion that is earned through action, right? So the comprehension of man, the wondering of how far can infinity influence the human direction, to have established that the human being is not just a physical entity because it's being influenced by abstract events. That means evolution was sculpted by a subjective event occurring behind the eyes of every entity that survived and got us here. That means this is what evolutionary biologist says. Just they go and bash like religious people and theists, but they don't understand what survival was, what adaptation of an evolutionary being was an ability to consider tomorrow. It was the ability to engage with the notion of the future, as if I leave this place, I will continue in the future. It was the development of the realization that the mind can actually live ahead of the moment, and that's what we see in history. At some point, the body was living faster than the mind. And now in 2025, our minds are living faster than the body because of the information age's developments. And so right now, our minds are moving faster than our bodies, which kind of puts us in an age where they're like, yo, man, is this species creative? We're like, well, it doesn't matter. Any species that wonders about its future unlocks the creativity of how its current design can move in different probabilities. So what I'm saying is infinity is something that at first might scare you, but then you begin to realize it is a modality of conceptualization or contextualization. You can say there's a finite being in an infinite world. You can say there's an infinite being in a finite world. Do you know you can say there's an infinite being in an infinite world? You can say there's a finite being in a finite world. The geometry is obvious. The notion is simply that What does it mean to human culture that a viewpoint is endless? What does it mean that the mind has an ability to see multiple viewpoints to the same moment? Does it suggest coherent pluralism, that multiple truths exist at the same time? Or is it suggesting that the context is to some degree being calculated, either limited or limitless? To me, the human experience is intentionally a limited experience. It's like there's a reason theologically they say we are neither like a beastly, yeah, and we're neither a beast and we're neither an angel. Man is in between, a creature that utilizes its archival abilities to update itself to models that in some sense it's the romantic or poetic search of a soul for its original meaning in a simulated world. Guys, I'm going to go to AI and I'm going to ask it what is the most advanced academic view on infinity so far, and then share a list of your own most advanced. All right, guys, I'm just waiting for it now to load. So, what does AI say? Part one: the most advanced academic view on infinity as of 2025. One, mathematical infinity, in brackets actual and potential. Potential infinity, Aristotle, a process that never ends. For example, counting numbers forever. It's not a completed thing, just an ongoing process. Actual infinity, George Cantor, a completed totality. For example, the set of all natural numbers exists as a whole infinite set. Okay, yeah, yeah. I'm trying to think how is that a completed totality? Yeah, it is a completed totality. Yeah, yeah. That means in yeah, okay. Then we go to Cantor's work, late 19th century, is foundational, developed set theory and introduced the concept of cardinalities, sizes of infinities. Showed that not all infinities are equal. Aleph null in brackets is the smallest infinite cardinality. Example, natural numbers. The real numbers are a larger infinity, uncountable infinity. Hierarchy of infinities. Cantor proved there's an infinite tower of infinities. Guys, there's an equation here. I have no clue how to read. Continuing infinitely. The continuum hypothesis CH. Is there an infinity between, I guess, I don't know, what is this, Aleph null 0 and the cardinality of the real number C? This is undecidable in ZFC, Zermelo Frankel set theory with the axiom of choice, proven by Gödel and Cohen 20th century. 3. Infinity in physics. Classical physics often assumes continuity. Space time, energy, etc., can be infinitely divided. Quantum mechanics introduces discreteness, Planck limits, possibly avoiding actual infinities. General relativity predicts singularities. Example inside black holes where density becomes infinite. But these are signs of breakdown in theory, not real infinities. Some cosmological models propose an infinite universe, but this is still speculative. Infinity, then, in cosmology. Yeah, yeah. That means that pretty much scientists, they're like, yo, man, what was before the Big Bang? And their answer is like the world is infinite. Anyways, to keep going, infinity in cosmology. Guys, there's way more to this than my comments. Just keep it in mind. It's a deeper idea. And for infinity in cosmology, infinite spatial extent. Some models suggest the universe is infinite in size. Multiverse theories. With infinite variations, each possibility may be realized somewhere. Eternal inflation. The cosmos spawns infinite bubble universes. Borde-Guth-Vilenkin theorem suggests past infinite time models have limitations. Then five, we go to infinity in logic and computability. Gödel's incompleteness theorems imply that systems with arithmetic cannot fully contain infinity without paradox. Turing machines can't compute most infinite sets, only recursively enumerable ones. Some concepts of hypercomputation explore beyond Turing models, often involving infinite processes or supertasks, but are physically speculative. Part two. So AI says my own most advanced. So at first I asked it to give an academic one. Now it's giving its own. I asked that too. It says part two. My own most advanced synthesis and speculations on infinity. Here's a list of original insights combining mathematics, physics, metaphysics, cognitive science, and futurism. These are not yet established in academia, would represent what I consider the most advanced humanly comprehensible reasoning on infinity. So, guys, this is AI's own answer of its most own advanced answer on what it thinks infinity is. One, infinity as metacognitive limit. Infinity is not a number or object, but a reflection of the limits of finite minds attempting to simulate totality. So I'm going to read that again. Infinity is not a number or object, but a reflection of the limits of finite minds attempting to simulate totality. Infinity always arises when a mind tries to hold the whole of something unbounded. It is the boundary point of all thought. So that's one view. Infinity as metacognitive limit. Yeah, it technically makes sense. It's like the border is not made of a wall, it's made of infinity itself. Two, we go to infinity is not one concept. Infinity is not singular. There are different species of infinity. Quantitative infinity, which is cardinality, qualitative infinity, which is divine perfection, structural infinity, which is patterns repeating endlessly, recursive infinity, which is meta reflection, example, thoughts, thinking about thoughts, temporal infinity, which is eternity versus endless time. They should not be collapsed into one notion. So, one view is that they can branch out. Three is infinity is a mirror of the divine. In theology and metaphysics, especially in Islamic philosophy, example Mullah Sadra, infinity is used as an ontological signature of God, unbounded, eternal, and perfect. But this infinity is not just in quotations large, it is categorically beyond all limits, a different mode of being, in bracket wujud. Four, infinity as comprehension boundary. Any finite system, in brackets like a brain or AI, compresses complex patterns into models. Infinity marks the point where compression fails. It is the horizon of modeling, thus infinity equals incompressibility in the highest degree. This connects to Kolmogorov complexity and information theory. 5. Infinity in simulated realities. In the universe, if the universe is a simulation, in brackets, infinity might be an artifact of rendering limits, akin to, in quotations, blue screen in metaphysical code. The simulation hits a recursion wall and returns, in quotations, infinity, the way a computer might return the infinity symbol when it cannot resolve a division. 6. Infinity as an aesthetic. Humans treat infinity with aesthetic reverence, the sublime, the awe, the terror. This is not accidental. It is a psychological recognition that we're facing something outside of our species' loop of meaning. Infinity destabilizes all narratives. That's a very great way of saying it. 7. Infinity is multiverse address space. Every choice, quantum split, or possibility in the multiverse can be seen as being indexed within an infinite address space. Infinity is not just about size, but about possibility navigation. Think of it as the, in quotations, coordinate grid of all counterfactual factuals. 8. Infinity and the soul. In many traditions, the soul is said to be, in quotations, eternal, but perhaps more precisely, the soul is open to infinity. It is the only known local phenomena that can contain the idea of infinity. The soul is the finite that knows it is finite and tries to breach it. That's an interesting approach. 9. Infinity as an attractor. In future computational intelligence, infinity acts as a strange attractor. It guides systems towards endless complexity, recursion, and self transcendence. AI, art, science, all orbit the gravity well of infinity. 10. Infinity is the final placeholder. All ultimate unknowns, the origin, the end to the divine, the cosmos, the self, are placeholders labeled, in quotations, the actual infinity symbol, until we evolve the capacity to give them better structure. In this sense, infinity is the signature of future discovery. Where we see the infinity symbol, we see future clarity. If you, yeah, that's it. So you see, guys, there's various views of how infinity can be applied to a concept or to a context. And for me, I think that it can be used as great inspiration because for me, I've wondered about an advanced civilization, but I've also wondered about the advanced human legacy. And I've come to this point that what would an infinite advanced civilization look like, or an infinitely advancing civilization look like? And it's technically a civilization that is advancing to the speed of light. And when it gets to the speed of light, it will no longer be visible. So the most advanced civilization in this world is not per se a visible's advanced civilization. But the whole point of it, at least for a religious person or a Muslim like myself, I consider myself to be a Muslim, and God truly knows what's in our hearts. But where I'm going with this is that to me, it all comes down to a simulated being's relationship with an original power. That means the simulation might be infinite. My sense of self, let's say, because it identifies with the simulation, can also think, I can think it's infinite. But beyond the infinity of endlessly rising and falling forms, the awareness to humanity's potential cannot be ignored. In the honor of the system admin, may the human species, in some sense, advance in the greatest possible way. Because we were created by the greatest, and in the presence of greatness, it's as if great we must be great. Thank you for listening. I hope this lecture was interesting for you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful. Oh, excuse me. A'udhu billah shaitan ar-Rajim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful. A'udhu billah shaitan ar-Rajim. May God protect us from the cursed one and unnecessary ignorance. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. All praise due to the Lord of the worlds. Rabbi Gfirli, my Lord, forgive me. My Lord, forgive my species for all the sins it is conscious and unconscious of. My Lord, forgive your creation for all the sins it is conscious and unconscious of. Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim. May God guide us to the direct path. May the most advanced guide us in the most advanced way. Thank you.